So let's talk about what the digital SAT is going to look like. It has four different modules. Module one and is all about well, I guess I should say section one. Section one is all about reading and writing, and that has two modules. The first module of reading and writing is sort of like a medium difficulty. And then the computer quickly grades how you did when you finish module one, when you finish those 27 questions. And then the computer decides whether you have earned the harder version of module two or the easier version of Module 2. And there's quite a big difference between the harder and the easier version. You'll probably be able to tell which one you got. And you really do want the harder version. If you get the harder version, you will get a higher score. And then after you finish the first half of the test, you move on to the math section and the process repeats. Right, so you take module one, everyone gets sort of the same thing for module one, it's a medium level difficulty. And then the computer decides based on how you did, do you get the harder or the easier module two? Again, you want the harder one because you will it'll be harder. You'll definitely get more wrong answers, but that still means you'll get a higher score. So how does that work? Oh, well, let's talk about that. You will be taking it on a computer. You'll be taking it on this app that's called the Blue Book app, and I have a screenshot here of what the Blue Book app looks like. You should, if you've not already, you should download the Blue Book app now because you also use this app to do practice tests, and you definitely want to take some of the practice tests on this app before you take the real test. And it will be the same app when you take the real test. You definitely need to have it downloaded anyway on the computer that you're going to take the SAT on. Okay, so you go to collegeboard.org and do be careful that I have this screenshot. Make sure it has that color blue, that like star icon, because there are some other apps out there on the internet that are also called Blue Book. For instance, Kelley Blue Book tells you how much your car is worth. It is completely unrelated to the SAT, so make sure you get the correct Blue Book app. You know it's correct if it has this icon, and also if you got it from collegeboard.org. All right. Um, Now, you're probably wondering when I said when you finish module one, you get the easier, harder module two. And a lot of students say, as soon as they hear that, they're like, well, that's not fair. If I get a harder test than someone else, won't I do worse? And the answer is no, because not every question is worth the same amount. You can get the harder test, get more wrong answers, and still get a higher score. Now, I would love to tell you how the SAT is scored, but unfortunately, the College Board has not been transparent about that. So I do have this information. This information is unfortunately not clear enough to reverse engineer it and to tell you exactly how it's scored. But what it does say is that every question, you can see in the first part, every question is rated according to the difficulty and the like the quality of the question, how good of a job it does on assessing students, and the guessability of the question. And then that rating tells you how much the question is worth. And you don't know question for question which ones are more important and which ones are less. But I'll tell you, some questions are only worth 10 points and other ones are worth 30 points. So, and I'm sure there's some 20 pointers in the middle. So you have to, don't try and figure it out while you're taking the test. Just do your best on every single question. But do know that it is graded fairly. Even if your test is harder than someone else's, that's okay. In fact, that's what you want to have happen. You want to get the hardest test. So, and I also think I want to mention, it shows here at the end, the SAT has two sections, reading, writing, and math, and each section is really small here, but you can kind of see it. Each section is graded between 200 and 800. So if you were to say get a perfect score on both sections, which is extremely unlikely, but if you did, the two sections together would add up to 1600. If you are going to take the PSAT, right, notice that the PSAT does not have the same scoring. It's close, but it's not exactly the same. The PSAT, each section only goes up to 760, so the maximum score would be 1520 on the PSAT. So if you take that test and you get a 1520, do not be disappointed. That is the best score you can get. So they're not exactly the same. And there also is like a PSAT 8-9, that if you're an 8th or ninth grader, you might take that, and that also has a lower scoring scale. So if you're taking one of those PSATs. Keep in mind they're similar but not the same as the SAT. One other thing I want to mention to you about this test is something called accommodations. Um, Maybe about 20% or so of the people who take the test do get some sort of accommodations. They get these because they have some sort of disability or other situation that will prevent them from getting their correct score in the typical circumstances, right? So, in other words, if you have ADHD and you do struggle with your focus, you might need more time because you'll be a little bit more distracted. And so, give those students will be given extended time if they've applied for it, right? And if it's approved, and that is not meant to give them an advantage. That is meant to even the playing field so that they get the score that they should receive, not the score. Their score is not diminished by their disability. So if you have severe test anxiety, the same thing, you should apply for that. And I just want you to know that's one of those things that will be approved for extended time. If you have like documentation, if your regular little school gives you extended time, then the SAT will as well. If you go to a regular high school, the best way to apply for extended time is to go to your guidance counselor's office and ask your guidance counselor to apply on your behalf. If you are, for instance, a homeschooler, so you don't have a guidance counselor, then you are going to have to apply it on your own. You can do that through the collegeboard.org website. Okay, you can also call in, and they do have a lot of information, but that's really not the best way. The best way is to go through your guidance counselor. That's definitely a fast track, and your guidance counselor is able to submit some paperwork that your school already has access to, so there's a lot less work for you if you do it that way.